Okay, I don't know. This sounds weird, but at the same time sounds like some proper millionaire shit. So apparently, Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis came out to say that they don't believe in bathing their kids or themselves too much. And their explanation for it was, if you can see dirt on them, then clean them. Otherwise, there's no point. And frankly, like much as this sounds like the words of somebody who's like, I don't know, still 4 years old, I do kind of believe in it because he's not the only millionaire that's ever said this. Because another person who didn't believe in taking showers was Steve Jobs. And that man was a proper innovator and he was a proper money man. So maybe these guys actually have something going, you know?
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
The truth of it is, I honestly wouldn't know which one is better, taking more showers or taking fewer showers. But frankly, this is part of the whole, when you become a millionaire, when you become a billionaire shit, like this is stuff that you start taking up. It's like people in Silicon Valley taking up chicken farming. Like, it's not something that you'd normally find a bunch of rich people doing, but you find a bunch of rich people doing it in the States because they feel like they can do it. And I don't know, it's like multi-millionaire wokeness in a sense. Because Steve Jobs also did believe in the idea of not taking showers because he felt that eating meats and, not living a healthy lifestyle in terms of your eating was what contributed to bad odor, and having a vegetarian/vegan diet meant that you didn't smell. Now, the unfortunate side effect of this is, while he was also believing this, people around him in the office actually felt that he smelt, and he smelt really bad. So, in a sense, probably he could have been right, but only in his head. And I am left to wonder if Ashton Kutcher is also going mad, kind of just like Steve Jobs. Although then again, both of them are multimillionaires. Both of them have invested in companies and do make quite a bit of money. And also, they've got money, so they can definitely pay people to stand them while they smell. So I know, even though I believed in it, I wouldn't be able to practice it right now. Although what I do believe in and practice is the talk of love, sex, and relationships, which I tend to do on this podcast all the time. And I should probably get into it because time is running. So, in typical fashion, welcome to Breaktime on Westside, your number one breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who believes in showering every other day because, I don't know, science, I guess. He's a man who once believed that bukkake was a Japanese form of martial arts. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Dababy. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex, and relationships show, where I get to talk about stuff that affects both genders in love, sex, and relationships. I might just include a story about Dababy here and there, but usually it goes for about 12 episodes. And would you look at that? It is the 12th episode of Season 7, which makes this the finale of Battle of the Sexes Season 7. Now, usually after this, and usually after the final episode of Tweet Street, which is coming this Friday, I usually tend to take a break of about 4 weeks. And usually in those 4 weeks, I tend to have this series where I tend to do collaborations with different people, just so that I don't leave my listeners high and dry with nothing to listen to. And I usually call that series Fan of a Fan, because I might be a fan of somebody might be a fan of my work, but we usually come together and we record something, and it's usually within the realm of love, sex, and relationships. So even though I will not be doing the regular episodes for the next 4 weeks, y'all will still be pretty well covered. And there's already people lined up. There's people that I'm gonna be doing the recordings with, so y'all make sure you stay tuned for that. But that being said, we should probably move it on. And before I get into the main topic of today, I do want us to go back to that whole Dababy thing that I was talking about at the beginning. Now, for those of y'all that probably haven't noticed, probably don't reside in the more hip-hop-y side of the internet, the hip-hop artist known as Dababy is getting quite a bit of flack online. He's apparently busy getting cancelled left, right, and center, and people have been giving him quite a lot of backlash over something that he said at the Rolling Loud concert that happened not too long ago. Now, I can't put the audio over here because personally I don't think it sounds that good, because it was recorded off of a phone camera and it wasn't that great, and frankly it'll just end up taking more time. But essentially what he said was, if you don't have AIDS or any other STDs where you'll end up dying in about 2-3 weeks, put your cell phone lighters up in the air. And if you're a guy and you haven't sucked dick in the parking lot, then also put your cell phone lighters up in the air. And when this footage was being shared out on the internet, people gave him quite a lot of backlash because there was the whole insensitivity to people with HIV and AIDS, and then there was the insensitivity to the LGBT movement and shit. And even though in some way he has come out to sort of apologize for things, he's been busy getting cancelled left, right, and center. So Dua Lipa was one of the first people to come out and quote unquote cancel him. And he's been getting cancellations from a bunch of different places. Recently, this past weekend, from the time of this recording's upload and everything, Madonna had come out to cancel him as well. And to be completely honest, he's been getting quite a lot of flack on this. People have been coming out to speak against what he said. And I'm not here to start saying that, what he said wasn't bad, blah, blah, blah. Like, I do know that there is an insensitivity and a certain level of ignorance to what he said, but I don't think that he should be getting this much hate from this many people. Like, that's just my personal thoughts. Because here's how I look at it. The HIV/AIDS statement, very insensitive, very ignorant. It clearly shows his lack of knowledge in matters that pertain to HIV and AIDS. And frankly, that wasn't a very nice thing to say. Now, for him, who's an especially big hip-hop star as of right now, like, that was not very nice of him to say. And honestly, I think he shouldn't have said that. And personally, I think that him coming out to apologize was actually a pretty good thing. He came out and he said that he didn't entirely mean what he said, and I do totally understand where he's coming out with that. But now there's the whole LGBT thing, like where he said, if you're a guy and you haven't sucked dick in a parking lot, put your lighters up. Now, here's how I look at it. I can get that people weren't happy with what he said concerning the LGBT, but I feel like that's a matter of personal preference. First of all, that reference was oddly specific. Like, I'm just gonna say it out there. It was oddly specific. I don't know how many people will be doing a performance and in the middle of the performance, they actually think about a nigga sucking another nigga's dick in a parking lot. Like, especially if you're a straight guy. It seems oddly specific. But anyways, that one aside, like him saying that and him, talking about the straight guys to kind of put their lighters up in the air, I honestly think that's just a matter of him expressing his personal preference in the people that he likes to chill with. Now, obviously, it's not like he can choose who his fans want to be or who they should be, but that's just him having a personal preference. Because at the end of the day, it's not like he was spewing hate onto the LGBT community. He just didn't express his liking for them. And for somebody to come out and say, he's anti-LGBT, personally, I feel like that's somebody that's just trying to catch a feeling from something that he did. And to be honest, just because the LGBT movement is really moving and growing right now doesn't mean that we all have to like it. And I think he has the freedom to speak his mind, and he probably should do that. Now, obviously, the biggest number of people that are giving him flack for this aren't his fans. It's the general public that don't necessarily listen to his music, that don't understand when he kids around, that don't necessarily resonate with the guy. And I can understand they're pretty much taking one piece of audio, one piece of footage, and blowing it out of proportion. Personally, I feel like for him, it was just a case of preference. But what he said about the HIV/AIDS thing was insensitive. But besides that, honestly, I feel like that's just his personal preference. Kind of like the same way Cardi B can still come out and say that broke boys don't deserve no pussy on a song. Just a personal preference, right? But anyways, that being said, we should probably move it on to our main topic of today, and it actually has quite a lot to do with last week's episode on Battle of the Sexes. Now, I did the episode and, I spoke quite a bit about culture, and it was all revolving around a certain question. And I did receive quite a bit of backlash from a couple of women, and, I'm honestly glad that people came out to give their feedback on it and, their thoughts and opinions on it. Because personally, I appreciate feedback, because sometimes I might be wrong and other times I might need to explain why I believe in such shit. And like all that aside, there was one thing that I actually forgot to do on that episode, And even after doing the recording the second time, because actually what you guys got to listen to was the second version of that recording, because I wasn't satisfied with the first version, there was one thing that I forgot to do in both those versions. And it was actually answering the original question that was asked. Because I really managed to focus on what this one guy had to say, the lot that he had to say, and the fact that there were so many women, there were so many people that were agreeing with what he said. And, I was very bashful, to say the least. So, considering that I didn't answer the original question, how about I actually get into it right now? Because it is actually a very important question. And if anything, I was actually supposed to have answered it, and I didn't. Although at the same time, the answers for it are actually quite lengthy, and that actually does explain why I couldn't exactly answer it in last week's episode. So I'll just read out the question for you guys, for those of y'all that are listening for the first time, as well as those of y'all that don't want to go back and listen to what the original question was, which was in the previous episode. And the question goes like this, and I quote, "What went wrong with marriage in this generation? Men don't trust women, and women feel like they don't even need men anymore. What the fuck was the spark to all of this?" End quote. And here's the thing, I really did want to answer this question originally. And there's so much that I want to say about this, and at least since in the previous episode I did all my bashful talking, and I went and I spoke about beliefs and culture and shit, like at least now that I'm done with that, I can now tackle this question in its entirety with a very sober mind. Because it's not that it's just one question. It's a combination of about 3 questions that have kind of been rolled up into this one big question. Because ideally, it's not just, what happened to marriages, it's also why is it that women feel like they don't need men, and why it is men feel like they don't trust women anymore. And as much as I would like to get into why the guys feel that way, let me see if I can handle the ladies first, because, well, ladies first. And since I have thorough experience having a penis, I do know that I will say quite a bit about men. So let me just speak about the ladies in a little bit. Why is it that ladies feel like they don't need men anymore? To be completely honest, there's a bunch of reasons for this. One, we're economically unattractive, or at least a large majority of us guys are economically unattractive. And this sounds like it's a very complicated concept, but it's not. Let me just put it like this. There's a lot more women nowadays that are making a lot more money, and the number of guys that is making a lot more money isn't growing at the rate that women are. And because women will want better and they will almost always date up, then it becomes harder for them to get a guy that they like that'll fit their expectations among the much smaller pool of guys that are actually at the higher level that they will be trying to date at. So at the end of it, out of frustration, they can just choose to, just stop it and, lay it down. Then secondly, there's too many bad relationship stories out there. There's the friends that'll tell them about how so-and-so is toxic. They'll talk about how relationships are stress here, relationships are stress there, or all men are dogs, all these guys cheat, even though we know very well black men don't cheat. You'll hear these stories time and time again, and they're the ones that will dominate the news, they're the ones that will dominate the gossip scene, and rumor report will always have such stories. And over time, it kind of makes you not want to get into a relationship because you don't want to go through the pain, especially if you've gone through it once or twice. Because there's a ton of babes that I actually talk to on the regular that are constantly telling me that they're done dating. They don't want to be with guys anymore because apparently all guys are cheats, they don't want character development, blah blah blah. And I can totally understand that. If you're going to give everything and your heart and somebody takes it and tramples it, I'd also feel pretty much the same exact way. Hell, I've had those feelings before. The only problem is I usually get horny and I don't play against the home team. But anyways, that's besides the point. Then the third reason is there's increased expectations. Because when you look at it, there's the couple goals on Instagram, there's the Hollywood romance that you've been seeing since back in the day when you were a kid, there's fairy tales from Disney, Pixar, and just about everywhere. And they give this sort of utopia of a relationship. And when you find that women go in expecting that and then they end up getting disappointment after disappointment, especially from the guy that's supposed to be their Prince Charming, then they become a lot less likely to go after those relationships because all they're seeing is a problem. And yet the truth of the matter is the expectations were shot up to the moon and they didn't even notice it, because you can say that you want a guy who makes a ton of money, who will take you on trips, who will treat you like a queen, and will never cheat on you. But the truth of the matter is, there's a guy that will do all of that, except that he'll probably cheat on you once or twice. And it might be just a physical cheating, just casual fun for them. But because he goes and he bangs around, you're like, you know what, I don't want that guy. Then the guy that wants to give you all of this and probably won't cheat on you probably isn't making as much money, or is probably just broke generally. And then you're like, you know what, I don't want Max because he's broke. Or you find a guy that'll do all of that, including be faithful with you, but because he's a staunch Christian or cultural person, he'll probably tell you to not wear makeup, to wear longer dresses, and to stop going to clubs and drinking. And you'll be like, you know what, Christian, I don't want you. And all of a sudden they'll be like, you know what, we don't want guys because all of them come with problems, all of these guys are garbage. Yet truth of the matter is, it's probably your expectations that are a little too high, and you don't expect downsides to a certain degree. Then now, on the flip side, to my gender, my fellow men, the people that I know a little bit more about and I can probably resonate with, the reason why we don't trust women no more is honestly because, one, there's a lot more women nowadays that are promiscuous. Like, over these past 2 seasons, I've spoken about revenge cheating quite a lot. And the people that are the biggest perpetrators of revenge cheating are actually women. Because instead of losing out on the quote-unquote power couple that is the two of you, or instead of involving the family and bringing up a lot of feuds because you notice that so and so is cheating and you want to leave, or maybe you want to maintain some of the additional benefits that come with your relationship or marriage, you decide to stay in the relationship or marriage, or just the partnership in general, but you have someone else that you're banging on the side. And I'll admit, it's something that a lot of guys are scared about, because the worst part of it is, a lot of us guys find it a lot harder to actually catch our women cheating. It's a lot harder for guys to find out whether the woman's cheating or not. One, because they're very good at covering their tracks, and two, guys focus on highlights while women focus on details. So it's a lot harder to do that. Then also, there's also a lot more cases now that have been coming up where people are finding out that their kid isn't really theirs. Like, a lot of men are finding out that, the son, the daughter, the children that they thought were a product of their marriage, a product of his bloodline, are suddenly not his. And no guy wants to be paying school fees for a kid that isn't his, not unless if he adopted them. And if he didn't know, then it makes it even worse. Then the second reason, fewer women can be trusted to be homemakers. Like, genuinely speaking, there's a lot fewer women that can classify as wife material. And here's the thing, I'm not speaking up against women, being themselves. Like, by all means, go and be yourself. It's just that nowadays, instead of being a better woman, nowadays a lot more women are trying to be a boss bitch, they're trying to be a bad bitch, they're trying to make themselves the queen and shit. And it comes at the detriment to a lot of guys who will be like, you know what, I just want my wife to make me a nice plate of food, or I would like for her to make me a cup of tea early in the morning. And they're like, no, so you can do that yourself. Like, it just makes it harder when you're trying to deal with a quote-unquote boss bitch. Then the third reason is, there's the expectations that she has, and then there's what she can bring to the table with all of those expectations there. Because you think about it, there was the expectations that these babes had that have increased. So, go for a high net worth individual that is kind, sweet, caring, treats them really well, treats them like a queen, can take her on trips, can get her gifts, and will probably never cheat on her. Let's assume that she can get the unicorn of a man that is this guy. Not very common, very hard to find. Let's assume that she can actually get such a guy. And once this guy has gotten this woman and he's like, you know what, I want you to be my wife. Now, you go ahead, you become his wife, but will you be cooking for him? Will you be cleaning up? Will you wait up for him when he's working late? Will you be ready to give it to him even when you're tired? When the house help is away and he asks you to make him a meal, will you get up and make the meal for him, or will you tell him to just order? Like, there's all of this that's been expected from the guy, but when it comes to what's delivered by the lady, it's not even that close. Like, when you ask her to cook for you, she'll literally take what you just said and tell it to the house help and tell her to do it for you. So at the end of the day, she's not bringing that much to the table, and it honestly feels like you paid full price for a knockoff item. Then last but not least, this is something that a lot of guys probably wouldn't really admit, maybe until now, but it's mainly because we know that a lot of women just can't tolerate a lot of our bullshit anymore. Like, they're tired of tolerating our BS. And it's something that does affect us to a certain degree, because why get into a relationship, then at some point, she suddenly expresses how she doesn't like how you go out drinking and you spend the whole weekend outside of the house. Like, she won't be tolerating that bullshit for a very long time. Hell, especially when you're married. Then, obviously there's the bit where if she can't tolerate your bullshit and there's another guy that could possibly be better in a lot of different ways who will come in and possibly sweep her off her feet, she could definitely leave you in a heartbeat. And that's something that is becoming more and more apparent for guys right now, because nowadays women are exercising their options a lot more freely, and there's nothing much that we can do about it. And the worst part about it is they can end up leaving us, and they'll end up leaving with half our shit. Like, there's always that possibility, and that fear will drive men away from marriage more than anything else. So in a sense, I think that's probably the best way to answer this entire set of questions, or at least this one big question that's been lingering. And to be honest, can I really even come up with a conclusion to this? No, I can't, at least not in this episode. For me to give a proper conclusion or to give a proper solution to this, I'd need at least 2-3 episodes. Although then again, I guess that's why this podcast exists in this day and age, so that we can kind of discuss and come to solutions to issues that affect stuff like this every single time. But anyways, that being said, I want to know your thoughts on this. Do you believe in everything that I said, or do you think it's absolute BS? Do you have something that you would like to add on to it? The DMs are open. On IG, it is at Breaktime on Westside. On Facebook, it is also at Breaktime on Westside. And on Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and thank you so much for listening all through this season. If you are listening through Castbox, feel free to drop your thoughts and comments below, and I will attend to them accordingly. And I will catch you guys on the next break.